All right, let me go over the wiring. I had made some videos initially, but I let my wife use the camera and she decided to change a bunch of settings, and it was all blurry and it was really annoying. And then of course there's like 20 dogs within 100 feet of my house, so they all play bark. Some are outside all day barking the whole time. Anyways, so LS swap, 8-1 swap, pretty much the same thing, wiring wise. Now, this is a 2002 drive-by-wire LS harness that I used. So the length here is kind of goofy. I had to shorten and lengthen some stuff and reroute some stuff. But what I ended up doing was a TAC module. I got to remember to point down at what I'm looking at. I used the O2 pedal, and I don't know where it's at right now because I cleaned up a bunch of stuff. I'm going to look briefly, and if I can't find it, then we'll just carry on. But there's 2 bolt holes on both pedals that match each other. So I was able to just bolt it in place. Now, I did have to modify the actual pedal arm because it is bent in the wrong direction. It pushes the gas pedal into the carpet or into the tunnel. And I'm not seeing it. I swore I set them aside just for this reason, because I wanted to go over this. I see fuse boxes. Oh, there they are. I see them. Okay. I did some cleanup, and of course when you clean, that's when you lose everything. But try to do this on this sawhorse without dropping it on the silver truck and scratching more of the paint. Let's see. Kind of line it up here. It's kind of hard to see because of the crook in the pedal. But upper right hole, that hole, and then bottom hole and that hole match each other in these 2 trucks. So I just cut this dog leg off, put a straight piece on, and then kind of guessed on the position. It's a little high. I'm not too worried about it right now. If it really bothers me, I'll just take it back out and adjust it. But I got full throttle and it doesn't hit anything. And there's a stop built in here. Let's see if I can try to do this one-handed. There's a pretty heavy spring on this thing. See, there's a stop built in. So as long as you don't hit the floor and before that stop hits, then you got full pedal action. So that was easy on that part. I took the dash apart, and I took the dash harness out of the other truck apart and just ran the wiring for that. Yeah. That's all right. And so I have that harness, run that through there. So the pedals here. I got to deal with some craziness. But anyways, so that's the pedal part. On this particular setup, I've seen it mentioned that some have 1 serial data line. My setup had 2. I ran, to get everything to work, I had to play with that initially. The stock PCM has 2 serial datas. My PCM had 2 serial datas. Now initially I tried to run 1 serial data over to the line that went to the BCM, and nothing worked. So then I ran it to the OBD2 port, and I've got the TAC working and the coolant gauge working. Now, I did more reading. I wish I understood the serial data stuff better, but I don't. And I tried to find some information on it, and it's really, I've got how to understand the network. Well, I understand what the network does. I just need to know what the communications are and stuff like that, and how GM does it. But I didn't find any information, at least easily, on that. And so anyways, there's 2 serial lines over here, pin 15 and pin 16 on the P12 PCM in these trucks, on the early ones at least. So I took the serial data lines. One is actually, I think one or both. Oh, both. Here they are, because they're right here. Yellow and black and green and white. They're different pins on the C100 connector. I know I'm throwing a lot of numbers around. I've had a spreadsheet that goes over this, but I ran both of those over there. I cut them off the PCM connector and then ran them in. Now, I don't know if there's a direction, but I ran them the way I thought it should be, and it works. So once I did that, my gas gauge worked, the Prindle light worked, the lights when you put it in gear, that worked. So that was 90% of it. Then I had to get the ABS light and the brake light off. If there's an ABS fault, it throws 2 different lights. So to get that to work, I had to run the speed signal, and you have to run it, give me a minute. You have to tap into the speed signal wiring that goes into the EBCM. So I did that because originally I cut it and ran it in, and it was having some issues, so I ran it into it, and I fixed those issues. I ran, and there's also a delivered torque and a requested torque you have to run. And then on the 2-wheel drive trucks, it's a single 2-pin plug that's right next to the fuse box here. Kind of buried at the moment. I don't feel like digging it out, but orange and black and yellow and black. And it's just a separate connector. Now on the 4-wheel drives, it has a bigger connector because it has like all the transfer case stuff that goes through it. Unfortunately, I don't care about 4-wheel drive. I hate dealing with 4-wheel drive stuff. It's like I have one vehicle with twice the issues that does the same thing. But anyways, so delivered torque and the speed. Now this is the 128K speed signal. That threw me for a loop initially because I ran the 4K to it and it was throwing all kinds of faults for that. Once I ran the 128K speed signal, it's also out of this connector here, I think. Am I lying? No, it's out of, well, on this one, it's out of the blue, I think it's called the C152 connector. So once I ran that, ABS lights were out. I pulled the Tech 2 up, and then it showed the requested torque. Of course, it was requesting 255% of torque and only delivering 100% of torque. So I had to go in the tune and adjust, I think, torque per gear or something like that. I just maxed it out, and then it matched. So it was requesting 100 and then only receiving certain percentages. So it can only go up to 640 foot-pounds according to the tune. So that fixed that issue. Let's see. So gas gauge. Gas gauge, you run ground into, I want to say it's a pin 80 on one of the 2 connectors on the 0411, and then you run the purple wire into the signal side. Now, on GMT 800s, especially if you've done a V6 to V8 swap, on some of them you notice that the gas gauge is backwards. Well, this does the same thing. So what I did was I go in and I flip the what it sees to tell the gauge, and that fixes that issue. What I also have is there was a difference in the numbers. So I went to a later E67 tune and got the capacity, but at least knew that. But the way they do it in those tunes is completely different. It's a percentage base, and it's like up to 60% is full or something. I don't know. It doesn't make any sense to this because this uses AD counts. So I matched the AD counts to where the numbers are. I'll put a thing up on the screen about it. And once I did that, I took my bad fuel pump, which is right there, and it still has the float on it. And I plugged it in and made sure that when empty was empty, it read empty, and when full was full, and it read full. So I got that working. So that fixed that issue. So it's down to the speedometer, and I think it's a PCM issue. What I'm going to do is I have a blue-green PCM over here, and it's pretty easy to change over. There's a difference in oxygen sensor wiring. I don't think that harness has it. I think it's a 6081 thing, where there's like an extra ground that runs somewhere. I'm not too worried about it at the moment, but I want to just flash a 04 Suburban tune into that PCM and then put it on and see if the speedometer works. So I think that's the speedometer issue. I made sure to butcher up a damaged cluster surround that I got from a parts truck. I don't know what they did here, but I use that to mount my Speedo. So then if I do get that fixed, and if I decide to go with a blue-green PCM, I can just put the other surround in and I'm good to go. But that fixed that issue. Then I got down to the cruise control. I'd love to have a converter box to convert the signal to the signals needed for this PCM. But for a little bit of time and stuff I already owned, including the wiring, I just made it real simple. On-off switch with a light, and then set, resume, which is also coast, and accelerate. And it's still with, I just got to remember it's over here. I've already done it a couple times where I try to set it over here. But I'd love for this side to work correctly. But, I mean, with these different communications, different systems, I'm just happy that works and I have cruise. So everything works. I had some balance issue with some tires. Took care of that this morning, so it drives a lot smoother. And that's the major wiring issues. I also, if you remember from my prior video, there used to be a GMT355 fuse box sitting here. Well, I slowly transferred all the wires over from this one. It uses the same style connector, but they connect different. This has a female nut on the connector, and on the GMT355 it has a male stud. So I just transferred them over where they needed to be, deleted the ones I didn't need, and so far everything seems to work. Of course, I ran electric fans because I have no frickin' room. I don't even know if they make a clutch fan that short. If they did, I might try it, but I don't know, and if I don't already own it, I don't care. So I just, 2 relays. I've got actually both relays right now running off the single trigger for whatever reason. I don't know if it's just something wrong with this PCM. I checked the settings, but the second trigger wouldn't work. I had one trigger for 180, and I had that one for 190, and it still wasn't coming on, so I just ran them both. All 3 fans keep it cool, at least so far. Trying to think of anything else wiring related. Other than that, I just routed the stock harness as best I could. Granted, this is an LS harness. I had to move coils to get stuff to fit. I'm happy with it. I mean, it ain't the prettiest, but for what I got into it, I'd like to see someone do a better job for less than what I spent on this. That's for damn sure. But I had to tweak those because of the booster, and I've actually had the valve covers off. I welded those breather bungs, and then changed out the black valve covers. They're over there actually on the truck, so I know I can do that. Once I got it running, the probably 10-year-old used water pump that was on here was leaking, so I had to change that. Luckily, it was just unbolted and slide it out this way, to change that. So I've already had to do some maintenance on it. This is my upper hose setup. This was a $30 Amazon thing. I think the fitting was actually more, that 150-degree fitting or whatever it is. It was like 40 bucks. So far, that seems to work. Haven't had any issues with that. The thermostat on this particular crossover was for a 70 Camaro with a small block. Trying to think of anything else. Oh, the only other thing I've seen that had a problem with, I smelt burning and I wasn't sure what it was, and then I opened the hood. And it seems like the exhaust manifold is melting that little rubber dingus on the steering shaft. Time will tell on that. I think the boot is there just to keep dirt out of the slip joint that's on there. For when if you wreck it, it collapses instead of, spearheading you in the driver's seat. I'll keep an eye on that, but that's about the only. And then, another major issue I had was I hated how, I still hate how high this thing sits, but at least it's level now. But I put 3-inch blocks just in the rear, and that leveled it out, but it moved the drive shaft up. And there's a small, actually there's part of it right there. There's a brace in the tunnel that comes really close, and I was not happy with the closeness of it, so I cut it out. I think if I was going to do it again, the only difference I would make is set the motor down about 1/2 inch. I had room to do it, so I'd probably do that. I can't go back any further. The bell housing bolts are already almost up against the firewall as it is. It makes connecting the crank sensor very fun. One of my initial test drives, I was driving it and the truck just shut off, and couldn't figure out what was wrong. So I just, drove it back here on the trailer. And the next day I figured it out. I was like, why am I not getting an RPM reference when I crank it? When I plugged into the crank sensor initially, I didn't have it clipped, so it had just popped out. So the second time I had to lay underneath the truck, twist my arm a certain way, and get the crank sensor to pop in and click. And but that's about the only thing. I think that's the worst thing about the 8.1 is where that crank sensor is at. Cam sensor is really easy. You can see it. Well, I can see it. It's right below that idler pulley under the water pump. And for now, I think that's it. I'll report back when I get to the AC stuff. I'm just going to wire. I've got it ran through the stock harness. I did cut the wires, not thinking about it at the time. So I have to wire up the 2 compressor wires and run it back underneath. No big deal. But I'm going to get it charged, do that, make sure the AC works, see how it cools then. So that's only the major issues, wiring. If you have any questions, just shoot me a message. I'll have my business page link in the description. You can fire off an email if you want a base tune to get something started and get it basculated. I charge $60 to do that. That's including shipping. So, trying to think of what else. I think the other thing I might change is I have the rear end that actually came in this truck. This one is the 4-wheel drive rear end. It's a 373. I love the acceleration of it, but I really like the lower cruising RPM. I think 80 is like 25 in this, 2,500 with these short tires. So I'd like it a little bit lower. And then, just to hold out the gears a little longer, because this thing doesn't really rev that. Fast 4,500, you're wasting your time on these. It's just the intake chokes them out too bad. But they make gobs of torque, so. But, since I don't have a bed floor, I had to come up with some way to carry stuff. And I found something to 3D print, fix my gas cans. But anyways, I think that's it. I'll upload these 2 videos. And if anybody has any questions or concerns, complaints, how shaky my camera is, etc. If you got some constructive criticism and a better way to do something, please let me know. I love to learn, especially if someone gives me an idea. I think other than that, unless someone has a blue bed, this color blue for the crew cab truck. I think the extended cabs are the longer bed. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it is. But if you have a blue bed like this, somewhere in Arizona or New Mexico or somewhere close, the closest one I found was in California for a fairly decent price. I just wanted to match. Saves me a lot of hassle. Unbolt it, put it on, keep going. But I think that's it for now. Let me know. Thanks.